So if everyone could just close your eyes and feel your feet on the floor, and come back to your breath and just connect with yourself. I call in all of our angels and guides for our greatest power. Please help us to be open channels. Please help us to remember the wisdom of ancient times so that we can build a future that is beautiful and abundant and supportive for all. Please help this message reach anyone who is meant to awaken through this podcast now. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this great work. Thank you for Kate. Thank you for this team. Thank you for this opportunity. So it is.
Welcome to Plenty. I'm your host, Kate Northrup, and together we are going on a journey to help you have an incredible relationship with money, time, and energy, and to have abundance on every possible level. Every week, we're going to dive in with experts and insights to help you unlock a life of plenty. Let's go fill our cups.
Please note that the opinions and perspectives of the guests on the Plenty podcast are not necessarily reflective of the opinions and perspectives of Kate Northrup or anyone who works within the Kate Northrup brand.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
This is such an incredible treat.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
I have to just wiggle about it. Okay. You recently had one of your reels go viral with over 4 million views so far.
Yeah, it's like 3.7.
Okay. Well, by the time this comes out, it is very likely 4. And it was about how, as a professional priestess, you earn twice the amount of money a year than your husband, who is a urologist. He's a Jewish doctor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened in the comment section of that reel?
People were so mad about this situation. And I think there's so many layers to it. And I was so fascinated about it for many reasons. The first one being, people are so threatened by the sacred feminine. And for good reason. Because the sacred feminine is the igniter of women's power and the inability to control us. And people feel that everywhere. And when it is obviously being supported by people and there is an exchange of currency that happens, I think people can feel that it's taking root on the planet again. And I posted the reel for a few reasons. You know, I think that something that I am passionate about is normalizing being a priestess, because I was really afraid to be a priestess for a really long time. As you know, I've been in training for almost 12 years. I was fully ordained 2 years ago, but even at the beginning of my ordination, my official ordination process, I was still having panic attacks anytime I introduced myself as a priestess, because priestesses were killed and tortured for our work. And just like any job in the sacred feminine. And we remember that and we feel it. And so I grew up in a really traditional town in a very normal family. And I grew up believing that only bankers and lawyers and doctors could make money. And I also really wanted to provide a beautiful life for my kids. I wanted to feel like I could run a successful company. And I just also want to say, I don't believe that spirituality is for sale. You know, the things that we charge for are our transformational containers and our retreats and the deep holding that happens. But I am not a gatekeeper to the goddess or to God. that is just available for everybody. But if you want to come sit in a space that I have purchased, then we're just going to have an exchange of money around it. I wanted to feel, could I have a symbol that I was just as worthy as a lawyer or a doctor or a banker? And
Just as worthy economically.
Yeah. Yes. And it's been a really beautiful journey just for me personally.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, there's several things. I'm not sure the order. Okay, we're going to start with the comment section.
Yeah.
And it's actually connected to the second
Yeah.
question. I want to know more why.
Yeah.
Because you slid in, and rightly so, about being afraid of the sacred feminine. Why is that the most powerful force on earth?
Yeah.
And why should we be in devotion to it, aware of it, and maybe even a little bit frightened?
Yeah. So good. So the first piece of archaeology that anyone has ever found, was the Venus of Willendorf from 30,000 years ago, who was a symbol of the abundant. I mean, she sort of looks like this, right? Like
similar to what I looked like when I was pregnant with Ruby,
right?
As indicated by this golden calf.
And just this symbol of the goddess of the Great Mother. And if you look through archaeology and art history, and what's so cool is that we only now know this because women are finally archaeologists. Like men just sort of like, not all men, but majority brushed over this sort of fact that the goddess, the Great Mother, was the supreme spiritual center of every single spiritual lineage all over the world for 30,000 years. Okay. It's only been the past 1,500. So think about 30,000 and 1,500.
Wow.
Okay. So this time in history that we happen to be born in, we are at the end of a hairline of time in human existence where the sacred masculine has been the center of the majority of, not everyone, but the majority of, traditional religion and spiritual lineages all over the world right now. So I'd love to give a little backstory on this. So I found myself in therapy in San Francisco after I moved there. This was like 13 years ago now. And
Can you just share the circumstances that were happening in your life? Are you about to?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically I lived in New York. I loved it. I was so happy in New York. I got married. We moved to San Francisco the next day because Jonathan was in his surgical residency at UCSF. So I'm in San Francisco as a preppy, like newly all over the internet weight loss coach. and I'm really struggling to make friends. And I find myself in therapy and I'm going, every other week. And I'm just like so annoyed with my body and just annoyed, sad about not making friends and annoyed with my new husband and all the things, just talking about surface level stuff. And one day I walk into my therapist's office and there's these like floor chairs on the ground and I can smell incense in the air and there's like candles that were burned down and there's all of these pictures of goddesses all over the wall. And all of a sudden, my entire body breaks out into goosebumps and my vision starts to blur. And it's like there was a switchboard change in my body where my old self left and a new version of me came in. And I recognized what had happened, even though I had never seen anything like it in my life. And I look at my therapist and I just said, what happened here? And she looked at me because here I am in my polo shirt and pearls and like beige patent leather pumps. And she's like, what is this preppy girl from Boston doing? Like feeling the frequency of what happened here last night. And she goes, oh, I'll tell you when you're ready. And I was like, bitch, I want to know right now.
Bitch, I'm ready.
So finally I convinced her to let me in. And I sat in my first ceremony and I had been just in this identity crisis because I had a really successful weight loss company. I thought it was everything that I wanted. I had married a doctor and I still felt unfulfilled. And every time I sat in ceremony, I felt like myself. And I started hearing, you aren't who you think you are. And I had incredible clarity instantly. I knew exactly what I needed to do. My anxiety would go away all in the course of 2 hours. And I'm like, what is this modality where like I've been in therapy my whole life. I've read so many personal development books, and this seems to be the thing that is having me change. And so I asked my therapist, like, what is this that we're doing? Where does it come from? Where did you learn it? And she said, well, this is what we did for thousands of years. And I am like, why do I not know that? And she's like, well, it was erased. And so being the nerd that I am, you and I share this in common, it's like freaking love getting into the history books.
Go to the library.
I'm going to go to the library. So literally I went to the library and I tried to find like any book I could find on the history of the sacred feminine. There are not that many. They're in the back of the library. Yeah. And my experience was I just started reading because I was curious. And as I was going through this process, this is also during the time when I had my first child. And I am all of a sudden like becoming this crazy alien 1950s housewife, like out of nowhere. I am like a highly educated feminist. And now I'm like making dinner for my husband on like before he gets home from work and wanting the house to be clean and the baby to be in bed. And I am looking at myself like, what is happening to me? This is very out of character. And I am confused about like, why do I all of a sudden feel the need to do all the dishes and all of this stuff and be the perfect wife and,
Wow.
And at the same time, I was super anxious. I mean, you remember, I was super anxious. I was really depressed. I was gaining a ton of weight, which was not great for my weight loss company. And I was just a complete mess. And I'm reading all these personal development books and I'm not changing. And then I start getting into, I'm reading the history of the sacred feminine and I'm going into ceremony. All of a sudden, I'm saying no. I'm leaving the house a mess. I don't feel so much pressure to be with my baby every second of every day and be the primary breadwinner, which I was because Jonathan was still in residency. And Jonathan at the time was like pretty edgy with me. He would come home angry and stressed out and he made it my problem. And I was just taking it for many, many years. And finally, I just stopped taking it. And I asked myself, why is it that I am transforming more reading history books about the sacred feminine than I was reading all these personal development books? And so I dug in even deeper. And what I started doing was making timelines of the different sort of like heights of sacred feminine societies and then its downfalls. Because I wanted to understand why was it we were all doing ceremony for so long and now we're not doing it anymore? And why doesn't anybody know that the sacred feminine used to be like literally the thing for the majority of human existence? So I started tracking timelines and looking at the erasure of it. And what I realized was the number one tool of the oppressive patriarchy was to go into a society and the first thing they did was erase the sacred feminine. They would immediately destroy the temple. The priestesses, the witches, the shamans were the first people they killed and tortured in public. And so I started wondering if removing the sacred feminine was the number one tool to control the masses, what would happen if we put it back? And that is my greatest mission in this lifetime. I love it when I make you cry.
Can't ask the next question. Okay. So that's what started happening 1,500 years ago.
Yeah.
And, it happened in Greece. It happened all over the world.
All over the world. Yeah.
There was the witch trials where you live, where I grew up. That was more recent.
Yep.
And so that piece that you said about when you would introduce yourself as a priestess, even 2 years ago or 4 years, however, whatever, that you would feel panic. So I want to highlight, and I know you know this, but just for those who may not be aware, that's real. That's
It's
not
real.
illogical. That's actually ancestral trauma in our DNA signaling to us it is not safe to be this in the world because of the memory your body held of the women who came before you for whom it was literally not safe.
Yes. And this is the thing, going back to that viral reel, the fear of the sacred feminine is still deliberately implanted in some traditional religions.
Hardcore. Not only the fear, but let's just talk about the non-existence.
Well, so this was sort of the difference between like my Christian upbringing and other people's Christian upbringing. So my Christian upbringing was just non-existence. There was nothing negative or bad or othering. We were the most accepting church community I've like ever heard of.
What kind of church was it?
It was a congregational Protestant church. And I was like, I mean, I really believe that one of the reasons I am a priestess is because of my minister, because like he changed my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that. And we never talked about women. And so when you just don't talk about it, you don't have metaphors, you don't have symbols, you don't have stories to signal your own confidence and power. But what happens in some other traditional religions is there's a direct othering and, you know, propaganda that the sacred feminine is evil and wrong and bad. So not only do we have this epigenetic, you know, coding in our body, there are also places that are set up to like poke at that.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I always tell the women that I work with is that our epigenetics are telling us that we could die. But actually the worst that can happen is just getting comments on Instagram.
Right. So I'm curious.
And we have to learn the difference.
We do have to learn the difference, which is so much of the work that I do with people is healing their nervous system. And one of the cool things about ceremony that I want to highlight too is that for thousands and thousands of years, 30,000 years.
Yep.
To be exact. We have, as humans, participated in ceremony to find safety and peace and wholeness and connect with our source inside our bodies, which is an inherently regulating nervous system healing activity.
Yeah.
So the work that you do actually is updating the coding on a deep energetic and physiological and lineage level.
Yeah. And they've studied this, like, and the body keeps a score. There's all of these incredible studies that show that when you gather in circle, when you sing, when you chant, when you are sitting on the ground, when you move through a set, you know, pattern of doing things, it does actually heal trauma in the body. They've tested it. It's so cool. You know, because I believe that humans evolved with ceremony.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just like, imagine the way I sort of explain it to people and what happens for people when they sit in ceremony with me is it's like, imagine that we evolved, like all of a sudden everyone started cutting off our left arm. And in 15,000 years, we don't even remember that we used to have two arms. We're just walking around with one arm. And it's like, we're fine, but it's like not as easy, right?
But we don't even realize.
And all of a sudden, there's this place that you can go that gives you your arm back. And you're just like, wow, look what I can do. And that's what coming online to your magic and your intuition and your remembrance is like.
And you do it through ceremony.
It's like, and you do it through ceremony because it's like getting your arm back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. You've taught me some things about history that seem very relevant to the conversation about women and money, which we started with.
Yeah.
How you're double out earning your doctor husband, which really pisses off the internet.
It really does.
Because you're a priestess.
Yeah.
And it might for other reasons as well. But I think specifically.
But here's the thing that I always like to think about. It's like, if I were Beyonce, no one would be mad. So it's like,
I think so. Few would, but it wouldn't like blow up the comment section in that way.
So it's just like, we have to look at that. Like if I just said, I'm a banker and I make more money.
It's so interesting.
Or I'm a singer. Like maybe even if I were like, I mean, I'm trying to think of some other examples. People would be like, yeah.
Well, just, I mean, I don't, you know, when the boss lady, entrepreneur ladies are like, you know, I retired my husband. usually it's like a big celebration. We can talk about why that's maybe not a great idea. But anyway.
Yeah. That's not my plan. Jonathan's a great doctor.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, there's so much there. But anyway. You have told me some things that really rewired me because they helped my body remember about the history of priestesses and money.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what was going on with the women who were the spiritual leaders of communities and finances?
Yeah.
30,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Or, even 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 5.
Yeah. I actually don't know the exact date of when money started getting used, but
I should.
Here's one
But it was
cool
with the Phoenicians.
Story. With the Venetians.
Phoenicians.
Okay, great.
With a PH.
We could talk about that. So one story I like to tell is that the Temple Juno was actually one of the first banks, and it was run by the priestesses. And in Europe, when the sacred feminine was the primary thing. So basically, in most societies, whether it was the priestesses or the shamans or the witches or just the spiritual women, they were the center of every community. They held not only the spiritual center, but the political center, because they were believed to have direct, I believe all genders have direct connection to God.
Absolutely.
FYI. But they believed that the women had direct connection with the divine, and they would channel what was meant to be done with the community, how to keep it fair, how to keep it equal, how to make sure everybody was taken care of. And resources, whether it was food or care or shelter, and then later money, how it was the best way to get distributed for everyone's needs to be met. And I just love this so much, because part of the erasure of the sacred feminine is erasing the memory of this. So imagine going to school in 2nd grade and learning about Greek mythology or Greek life. My son in 4th grade is learning about it right now. Oh my God. So this is just a quick aside. He's like, Mom, I learned about Hades today. I'm like, awesome. What did you learn about Persephone? He goes, who's Persephone? I'm like, what the fuck? We have so much work to do.
Yeah.
But imagine if he's learning about Hades and he's learning about Juno and the Temple of Juno and how it was a bank run by women. That information changes how we see ourselves. And so I just think it's super important. And then the other thing that I love to talk about is that women made money through the spiritual and healing arts. It was a huge industry. It was the original medicine. It was the original family care. It was, how we tended to our plants and our food and how we tuned into each other and healed each other and connected with each other and, navigated wars and navigated peace treaties. And we earned money for that, or at least gained resources depending on what the systems of currency were. And it was those jobs that were targeted and erased in the burning times in Europe, because the doctors wanted all the people to go to them. So you can imagine the healing that's happening in my relationship. Also Jonathan is for sure a healer.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the cool thing that
most doctors are.
Yeah. I have a client who's an ultrasound technician, and she's realizing she's actually a sound healer. So,
of course she is.
So we come in with this knowing of our healing abilities. And because there are not jobs right now that people know about, it's changing. We come in as a sound healer and we look around and we go, oh, I must be an ultrasound technician. Right? It's so cool. So Jonathan came in as a medicine man. And he's looking around and he's like, oh, I must be a doctor.
To heal penises.
Literally. Which is all about the sacred masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Jonathan's actually really here for the women. He's here to help heal women through the men.
Exactly.
Which I'm so proud of him.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
He's such an incredible man.
Thank you. Thank you, as if it was something I did. He's an incredible. I married him. It was good.
You helped to draw out
I did
the best in
yes,
him.
I did.
So I think you can say
you
can take a little bit of credit.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was a good substrate.
Yeah.
And you've worked well together. tell me about, this is a really important piece of history that I share a lot. So something that happens in my community is that women will be working on healing their relationship with money.
Yep.
And they will possibly be, sometimes they're making their own money. Sometimes they're being supported by their husband or their other partner. Sometimes they come upon this big inheritance. Sometimes abundance comes in all these different ways.
Yep.
And they, because of our conditioning, discount any abundance that does not come directly through their earning it in our current economic system of like, I've traded hours for dollars.
Yep.
And something that you taught me was about the financial relationship between Jesus and Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
And can you talk about that? I think people need to hear this.
Absolutely. Okay. So,
and in case it's not clear how it's related, I'll tie that up in a minute.
Okay. So the Essenes were a group of Hebrews that left the Hebrew religion when the rabbis started pushing out the women. So it used to be, I mean, in every religion, that the women and the men were both the heads of the spiritual communities and the religion at the same time. There was a great mother and a great father. The male rabbis wanted to start to aggregate power. They started pushing out the women. But the Essenes went into the mountains and they started preparing for the next teacher to come along. They started getting visions that this incredible man and woman were going to come to re-imprint that men and women are meant to lead together. So when you were an Essene, you would go to Egypt to train within the ancient mysteries of the temples of Isis and the temples of Dendera. The temples of Isis are like an ancient ceremonial lineage, and the temple of Dendera is an anointing lineage. So Mother Mary, whose name was Miriam, when she was coming of age, she was sent to Egypt to get trained in both of these temples. And she learned, we're just going to go there. She learned how to consciously conceive a soul that was so big and expansive, it could not be held in a normal body. That does not mean it was immaculate, not through sex. Many people believe that Mother Mary had a sex magic, a conscious conception with another priest who also knew how to pull this level of expansive energy through his body. And they made Jesus together. Mary Magdalene, also being from an ancient line of Asherah, right, grew up learning about
Who's Asherah?
Asherah was the female god in the Hebrew religion. Okay. Mary Magdalene also trained in the temples of Egypt. So both Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, they're highly connected priestesses. And all around ancient Palestine and Jerusalem, the sacred feminine was very alive. It was alive in Greece. It was alive in Asia. It was alive in Egypt. It was just this center where the men were really taking over. And so Jesus came in to basically say, this woman, my beloved, Mary Magdalene, is just as holy as any man here. And it is our love that is going to heal the world. And people did not like that. But the piece...
Because at this time,
the patriarchy...
the time of the rise of
the rise of patriarchy. Yeah. Yes. And what's so important is that because all of these women were so connected to all of these temples all over the world, they were the ones who funded Jesus and Mary Magdalene's ministry. Wow. They were the bankrollers.
Back to the Bank of Juno, and I know that's something different, but
I haven't read about
holding the money.
The temples were holding the money. The priestesses were holding the money.
Bankrolled Jesus's and Mary Magdalene's ministry. Now, is it true that because she was a priestess, Mary Magdalene may have been actually a very wealthy woman?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like back in the day, wealthy wasn't the same as the way we hold it, right? So like people didn't have bank accounts where they were storing money. Right. It's actually like a beautiful metaphor. They just had access to shared money. And because they had their own economy as women. And so that is a slightly different model than what we have now. But I think it's the model that a lot of women want to create.
Well, what we know, because you spoke about, that time period before the last 1,500 years of patriarchy, in which women were not only the spiritual, but also the economic centers of communities, deciding even before currency, deciding how the resources would be distributed and that, healthcare and food and all of those things. What we know from the data now is that when women are in charge of the economic decisions, we outperform men from the perspective of investments. So women outperform men with investing. Also, when women hold the economic power, and I'm not saying holding the economic power over men. No. I'm just saying like equal amounts, right? Yeah. Although I don't think the studies have been done because I'm not sure exactly where it exists, where there's a society where there is equal. So the data I have is like when women have more money, not more money than men, but like more money than they had before.
Right. Okay. I love that.
Just to be clear.
Okay. I love that.
So when we give more economic power to women, what we see is that everyone's education improves. Everyone's health outcomes improve. Addiction goes down. Development goes up.
It's amazing.
Well-being in communities goes up. And so what we're seeing now in the year 2024 is exactly what you're speaking to from any time before the last 1,500 years. It's like when women's needs are met and when we have access to financial power and decision-making and agency, everyone's needs get met. Yeah. Everyone does better when women have access and are conduits of resources, not necessarily having, bajillions in their bank account, but access and knowing how to wield those resources and distribute them.
Exactly. So this is the thing that's coming through right now that I think is really important. And it's this point that I want to make, that an entire industry that many women were very naturally gifted at was erased. And so I think it's really important to understand how the sacred feminine arts is just a new industry that people need to listen to and pay attention to, and to notice when there's still internalized brainwashing.
Oh, yeah.
That you should not make money doing that.
Okay, so like specifically, what are examples of sacred feminine arts? Obviously, being a priestess is one of them.
Just one.
So like leading ceremony.
Yeah, leading ceremony is one of them. That's what I do. But people,
by the way, you were definitely born for it. I will never forget flying in to Nisha Moodley's baby shower or baby blessing, whatever.
Baby blessing, yeah.
Blessing. And I knew you at that transition of like weight loss coach to like,
Well, that's when I was like in the closet about being a priestess.
And you led this baby blessing ceremony thing. And I was just like, I don't know what's happening right now, but this woman was literally born to do this. And I didn't even know what to call it. I wouldn't have said like, oh, she's born to lead ceremony. But I was like, whatever's happening here is pure magic. And she is channeling it and bringing it into the space. And you were so unapologetic about it. And I will never forget the feeling. And that was the first time I sat in ceremony with you.
Thank you.
It was incredible.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I just like, and it's so weird because I thought I was gonna like be an event planner.
Weird.
Well,
you kind of are.
Well, that's the thing, because it's adjacent.
It's like the ultrasound
I was not
tech.
completely wrong.
Right?
Yeah. Okay. So here's some other things. It's like sound healers, tarot card readers, psychics, astrologers, any person that is tuned into any part of the unseen language of the universe. Like there's a whole other language that a lot of us spoke when we were children. When I was a child, like I could hear the trees. I would go into my backyard, I could hear the land. And then I just thought that like, oh, that was like a weird childhood. I was just making it up. And then as I started coming into ceremony and coming into my gifts, I could hear the land again. And it's like, magic is real, guys. Magic is real, guys. Guys, it's wild.
It's real.
It's real. And to me, anything, all these sacred feminine arts, you can just feel when I say it's like, ugh, like tarot card reader. Is that like really important? It is, because it bypasses all of our brainwashing.
And the brainwashing, just to be clear, I want to super build out the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
The erasure of the sacred feminine happened around 1500 years ago.
Yeah.
Was this around the same time as Jesus?
No. Okay. So basically what happened was,
not a historian.
It's fine. So basically what happened was the patriarchal powers of the time, like was it the Ottoman Empire? It's probably like the Ottoman Empire. They didn't, they killed Jesus. They didn't want Jesus to be there. And then I wrote this poem called Poor Jesus. It's just like, I'll put it on the internet. I read it during ceremony sometimes. Like, poor Jesus. He literally came in to talk about the balance of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. And then the same people who killed him for that were like, you know what? People seem to like this guy. So we're going to take his teachings and change them to benefit us. Yeah. So what they did was they created the Bible, which was not actually what Jesus taught. And you can go back and read the Gnostic Gospels, the Gospels of Mary Magdalene. You can get in deeper now. Like, all the stuff is coming out, which is so great. Thank you. And they use the Bible as a tool to say, this is the way. And there's all these, look at what Jesus said about, men are the only access to God, and you have to give, priests money in order to have access to God. Like, that's just not true.
That's the piece I want to really make sure people get.
Yeah.
What was happening was a very real awareness of the power that folks who were connected to the divine feminine had access to.
And the divine masculine. It's both.
The divine masculine, because we all, no matter our gender, have a direct line to God.
Yeah.
All of us have the divine inside us. And so whoever it was, for whatever reason.
It was Constantine.
Okay, thank you. It was Constantine. Came in and was like, I don't want
everyone having access to God.
Power. I want to control
everyone.
And the best way to do that is to disconnect people from their direct line to the divine. And what is one of the main ways that women connect to the divine?
Sex.
Through our bodies.
Exactly.
Through our bodies. And so we were told what about our bodies?
That our bodies are dirty and evil and dangerous.
And that sex is dirty
and evil and dangerous. Yep.
Yeah.
And so this comes into, so basically they created the Bible, and then there were these waves of war that happened in the name of Jesus. And they would say, they'd come into a town, and it's like, anyone who doesn't believe in this is going to die. And they wrote all these things in the Bible about the body being dirty and blah, blah, blah. And so they would use that as an excuse for any woman who was embodied or in her body or was not currently married to a man. She would be called a witch and get killed. And so imagine being alive during that time, and the only way you are safe is if you are married to a man. They also started taking away all of the women's jobs. So if you were an herbalist, if you were a healer, you would be called a witch and get killed.
The entire industry
was wiped out. So this literally created the current economic situation that we're just starting to get ourselves out of, where women were dependent on men. This was not the case forever.
At the time of this recording, today,
50-year anniversary
of women being able to get a credit card in their own name alone without a male cosigner.
Only 50 years.
Right. It's so recent.
It's so recent. So this is the thing I want everyone to understand is, like, we are in it, you guys. Like, we have been in this dark period of an oppressive system. And it's only been 50 years that we can get a loan and open our own credit card. Like,
It's happening now.
It's happening
It's
right
like
now.
game time.
And so it is so normal to feel nervous about it. It's so normal to feel weird to make money. It's so normal for it to feel scary to own this part of our lives. But it is here for us to own this and to transform it and to not forget how it was violently taken away from us. The piece that I want to bring back around traditional religion and what was happening is, imagine if you really, what it was about was money. So
Exactly.
if people believe that they can't access the divine, that they have to go to church to access the divine, and basically what they're saying is the only way to God and the only way to be saved is through Jesus. And the only people who can talk to Jesus are the priests. So if you want to be saved, you have to come hang with the priests and give them money, right? This is why I'm like so careful to not like also do that.
For sure.
Right? So my job is to teach people that they each can have their own relationship with the divine. It is not through me. Right? And when people come into ceremony, what I am teaching them how to do is have their own direct relationship with their soul and with the divine.
Yeah.
I'm not there. They're not watching me channel. Like that's not what's happening. I'm just creating the container and creating the environment so that they have the most direct connection to the divine.
Yes. Can I highlight the value that they're receiving from doing that though, versus doing it on their own? Because we can all, like, I can sit in ceremony by myself, which sometimes I do.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah.
And I don't pay anyone. And there are ceremonies that you can also go to where you're not paying.
Yes.
You have, at this time in history, it is not the most obvious thing to find the other people.
Right.
Who want to do this.
Especially in New England.
Especially in New England.
Yeah.
But even like where I live in Miami, maybe it's a little easier than New England, but really still not. Like the people who are really like, I want to be in community with in this way.
Yeah.
There aren't as many who have woken up yet.
Totally.
And so the value that you're providing is multifaceted. And I mean, the ordination and all the work and all the, like the scholarship and the space holding and the clearing your own container, like all of it. And the service you are providing is also being a lighthouse for all the other souls who are ready, so that folks don't have to do that on their own. Because honestly, it is an incredibly amplified experience to sit in ceremony with these other people, and you have done the work to gather them.
Yes,
and
I have.
Make it super beautiful.
Thank you.
It's true. Your ability to create sacred beauty is like one of your most important skills that I don't think you talk about a lot in your business. And it really, it's a massive difference setting you apart.
Well, that's what I love about my priestess lineage, which is the 13 Moon Mystery School, is that there's all of this training around the material space of a temple that you are creating in ceremonial space. And I love doing it. And what's so special right now is that, it's been 6 years. Holy Woman has been a community for 6 years. And we have, almost 1,000 members all over the world. And what's so great about this community is that it's really deep and there's no ego. These are women who are really here to do the work. And it's just the most special group of people. And what I love about it is we have an incredible directory, and women get together for ceremonies now, because what we do is we get together in person at my temple, at my house, and we have a professional video crew come, and then women put me up on their TV in their living room, and they have, 2 or 20 other women over to their house. And it's the best, and this is how movements start, is in living rooms. Yeah.
And this is really the church that so many of us have been craving and haven't been able to find because it got erased.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And the way I also like to think about it is it's also an initiatory transformational container. And so it's really like being in the mystery school of life and having this opportunity to activate parts of ourselves that have been dormant. Like I'm here to give people like their arm back.
You are a major activator. When people get into your space, myself included, just as your friend, like stuff comes up and you are really, you're wired for that. You're born for that. You shake stuff up so people can wake up.
Yeah.
And
My,
it's amazing.
My priestess nickname in my communities is fire starter.
There you are. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
10, 8.
Almost 6.
Almost 6.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're
and really almost 9. Can you believe it? Annabelle's going to be 9
Our girls
in
are
August.
going to be 9 this summer. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a Jewish husband.
Yep.
You were raised
Christian.
And you are a sacred feminine, a priestess of the sacred feminine.
Yes.
And some people might think that those 3 lineages might be somehow at odds with each other. And then like, what are you teaching your kids about God?
Yeah.
What are you teaching your kids about, because when I hear this stuff, so I actually grew up in a household that was like, we worshiped the divine feminine.
Right.
I mean, we did ceremony every solstice.
It's amazing.
I was in a documentary that my godmother made when I was like 7 about the ancient goddess cultures.
Amazing.
Which I never told you about. But anyway,
that's
how I learned about
Yeah.
Venus of Willendorf.
Right.
Like, and all of the imagery is so beautiful. Okay. That was just like one small segment of my household.
Yeah.
I was also raised in the rest of the culture where it was erased.
Yeah.
And so there's grief here.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's really sad. I think that's why, like, when you talk about it, I just get really sad.
Yeah.
And so as a mother, like, how are you bringing this into your daily life with your kids so that they're not, at least at home, being raised in a household where it's omitted?
Right. Yes.
Because the omission, while maybe not as directly traumatic as the erasure and the violence, it's still really traumatic. The omission.
Is. Yes.
Growing up in sacred communities, in churches where the women's stories were not mentioned and where God is worshiped as a man is highly, highly problematic.
It's very true.
Okay. So what are you doing about that with your kids?
So just like the example of Marshall coming home and not knowing who Persephone is, I just take time to sit down with him and teach him about Persephone. So this is something that I always say, like in Holy Woman, we're bringing back these stories, we're bringing back these histories. And I'm writing a book about it. I'm really excited. And I think it's our job as mothers to learn this information and teach our kids. Because like, this is part of what the church brainwashed us around, is that all we had to do was show up and be sheep and just listen. And we outsourced our spiritual education to the church. But Jonathan and I, we call it home Sunday schooling. We have taken back the responsibility. It's our job to educate our kids on the divine. And so we just take time to do that. It's like homeschooling was not our path. I mean, you remember.
Yeah.
The teachers are better at teaching my kids than I am. However, I could not find a religious head that was going to be better at teaching my kids than I was.
Sure.
So I took that on. It takes a little bit more effort, but I believe that every single parent can do this. That's, I'm always asking about what are they learning in history in school? Like, what are they learning about ancient mythology? And then I'm just filling in the holes for them all the time. We talk about the phase of the moon as much as we can. So it's like at breakfast, it's just like, or we go outside, what phase is the moon right now? So I'm always sort of quizzing the kids. I like to quiz them. Is it waning or waxing? How close does it seem to full? When do you think the new moon is? Can you remind me what happens during an eclipse, like astronomically and energetically? And so I know when I'm like quizzing them a lot, they remember because they're needing to dig into their memory bank from like when we talked about it last. We do as many gatherings we can around the earth-based holidays. And bring in, there's 8 of them, so there's winter solstice, which is Yule. And then there's Imbolc, which is the halfway point between winter solstice, spring equinox. Then there's spring equinox or Ostara, which sounds a lot like Easter. And then there's Beltane, which is the sex holiday. It's my favorite one. And then there's summer solstice. And then there's Lammas, which I never celebrate. I should probably get into that.
August 2nd.
August 2nd. And then there's Mabon or fall equinox, which is one of my favorites. And then there's my absolute favorite, which is Samhain, which is a lot of the traditions from Halloween come from. And then we get back into winter solstice.
And those names are from the Celtic
Those are from
religion.
the Celtic pagan religion.
Yeah. Which is both
and
of
they
our,
all have, there's different names of different lineages. That is also my lineage.
Exactly.
I
Same.
have Celtic blood in my body. And so that's why I use those names.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do those earth-based celebrations to the degree that is possible with 3 kids and a very full life.
Totally. And then the other thing that we do is we will, we'll like smush them together. So we'll do like a Yule, Christmas, Hanukkah gathering. And what I'm doing is I'm like basically showing my kids where the overlap is, because I believe that we can preserve traditions of our upbringing and of our religions without feeling like they are in competition with each other. You know, it's like we can, because this was the whole thing when Jonathan and I were getting married. People are like, how are you going to raise your kids? I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like, it is just made up.
Totally.
That having multiple faiths in a house dilute the other faith. Like, my kids are so effing Jewish. It's like hilarious. And they are so sacred feminine too. Like, it's just the same thing.
It is the same thing. One of my best friends in college, I remember one day we were sitting down and talking about what we believe about God and the world. And I said, I was just like, were you raised in a religion? What is your perspective? Like, how do you connect, whatever? And she said, I just feel like there's so much magic. Why choose?
So exactly.
It's the perfect summary of connection to the divine.
Like, and everyone has a different venue that matches their system and their DNA that gives them the biggest felt experience of the divine. For some people, that may be going to church. For some people, that may be sitting in ceremony with me. For some people, it may just be lying on the ground in the woods, because all of our bodies are made differently. All of our lineages are different. And so it's just so important to go find the place that resonates with you. And that's why I was so happy to finally find this specific lineage. And I tried other ones. I like really went around and tried all the different things, but I'm like, and I came home to 13 Moon because it was the place where I felt the most like me and I felt the most alive. There's something about the technologies and the way that we uniquely hold ceremony that just did it for me. But that's not going to be the case for everyone. But I just knew that this specific set of technologies was so powerful for me. I wanted to bring it to the world and give people easier access to it.
One of the things you've said for years that it took me like a really long time to understand. First of all, the first long while you said you were a priestess, I really didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, it's cool. No one does.
Yeah, just so you know. I really get it now. And also, you were like, the most important thing for women is that they have a sacred practice.
Yes.
And I just was like, what? Okay. So I get it now.
Yeah.
What is a sacred practice?
Yeah.
Why is that so important as literally the cornerstone of your entire life?
Okay. So when the sacred feminine was removed, part of the reason they did that was so women lost their center. When women lose their center and they do not know who they are, what happens is, and women care deeply, right? We are so loving. And if we don't have our own direction, we're just going to get on somebody else's boat. So what has happened in our society is that women have grown accustomed to being on like 30 other boats. And just like jumping from boat to boat. How can I help you with your boat? How can I help you with your boat? How can I help you sail this ship? Right? Here I am, ready to help, right? And so what a sacred practice does is it brings us back to our ship and our boat and our rudder. Where are we going? Where do we need to trim our sails to get on our path? And when we know where we're going And when we have clarity, we can pick and choose what other boats are related to our boat or helpful, or you know what I mean? And that we're not like, blah, just helping everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And I find that when women get really clear on their ship and where they're going, the mothership. Thank you for finishing my analogy. We end up helping more people.
Yes.
By being on our unique path that I believe, this is just my opinion, I believe that we each came into this lifetime with a thing we were meant to do, with a very clear mission and purpose. And I like to say responsibility. It's like, I believe that before we came in, there's just like someone stands up there is like, okay, these are the jobs. This is what's needed for humanity to evolve like around this time. Yeah. Who's going to be responsible for this thing? You know, and we're just like, well, I guess I'll take that one. Fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I guess I'll do the priestess
guess I'll do that. So I have experienced when women feel what their responsibility is. And then when we get on board with that, there's a chain reaction that happens. You know, one thing I like to say is like when we turn on our lights, it helps other people see their light switch in the dark.
100%.
Yeah.
And you do that for me every day.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I mean, the verve with which you live your life and your calling and with which you parent and the way that you lean in your marriage and your friendships, like it has brought me to another huge level of what's possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
And I just want to say, I was not like that. I am only like that because of ceremony. Like I was the biggest people pleaser.
It's really hard for me to imagine you that way, even though that's how I met you.
Right, totally. I was in the transition at the time.
Yeah.
I was the biggest people pleaser. I wanted to be who my parents wanted me to be. And I was like the biggest chameleon. I would walk into a room. I could tell whoever that person needed me to be for them to be comfortable, I would become that person.
Which is a trauma response.
For sure.
That is really adaptive in our culture.
Yeah.
So like, thank you to the inner chameleons. It has gotten us very far.
Very far. It's kept us safe. And
now it is safe
to be ourselves
in maybe not all, but most situations.
Most situations.
Yeah. I want to bring this home. Okay, I'm not sure I can tell this story. That's so wild. I'm also totally premenstrual. Extra. Which, by the way, I want to highlight that one of the principles of the sacred feminine is following our cyclical nature, as you mentioned.
That's another thing I do with my kids.
Okay,
I announce when I'm on my period.
Ta-da!
Yeah. It's like, it's just a thing. And they're all still like all about me all the time. Like,
of course,
I want to see the blood. I want to do this. And it's like, great.
Why
like,
let's go putting that inside you? How does that work?
Yeah, let's go offer it to the land together. Yeah. Like, this is what it is. Like, this is literally the elixir of life.
Okay, I remember, this is a side note, but but related.
Yeah.
When I got my period back after I had Ruby, I think you called me or something, and I was like, oh, I had my period back. I think it was like 9 months postpartum or something. And you were like, did you offer it to the land? And I was like, you are so weird. No. And you were like, no, you have to. You have to.
I'm like, did you put it on your face? Did you drink it? Like, you just got to do all the things.
No. But then you were like, you have to. And it was the winter in Maine. And so like going out in the snow to just like drop blood in the white snow, it's a lot. And there were contractors everywhere, but I did it.
I'm so proud of you.
So this is the power of having expanders in our lives who push our edges in terms of what we see is possible for ourselves. Whether it is like,
everyone needs
putting your menstrual blood on your face or in the land or whatever it is. Okay. What
was the thing that you're crying about?
Yeah, the thing I got crying about. Okay, so, but I do want to say this. The reason women get more emotional as we approach our menstrual cycle is because it is the luteal phase. It is the same as the waning moon energy. Yeah. It is the same as the autumn energy. It is the same as when the veil is the thinnest at Samhain. And so it is the time when we are the most connected to spirit, to the divine, to what really matters, which is why hormonally we get more emotional, and that's not
and discerning.
It's not to mistrust that and say like, oh, I'm so hormonal.
Yeah.
So I just want to highlight that I said that, and there's like wisdom here.
Right.
There's a reason because I'm raw and I'm like way more present to what matters.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Great.
The veils are thin.
The veils are thin right now.
Yeah.
And so you led ceremony at my mastermind a year and a half ago. Well, not even 13, 14 months ago, 15 months ago.
Yeah.
At the closing retreat of my mastermind, which I don't run anymore. And before you led ceremony, you did an anointing ritual with me, which was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And
that's another really great priestess job, by the way. And one of my mentors, Diana Dubrow and Kalila Dowdy, teach an incredible program called Rosa Mystica. Just quick pitch. Because I'm also a trained anointing priestess.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
It's important to get training.
Very.
This is like,
save it.
Can we talk about this? Yeah. Okay. So it's
coming back to the story, but this is important.
I'm sorry.
It's great.
So many things to get in. If you are going to make money through the sacred feminine arts, it is really important that we are creating an industry that is respected and safe to be a part of, which means that we need training. Yeah. And it would be like an architect building a house without going to architecture school. Yeah.
Or a doctor doing surgery without going to medical school. It matters that much.
It really does matter. Because when you're working with energy and forces, if you do not know how to work with them correctly, you can really mess people up. So it's just super important, because I think some people think I just call myself a priestess. Like people say like, I'm a goddess. It's like, no. I had a decade of training. And I was like,
which is
really
longer than medical school.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan had 11 years.
Okay, fair.
But still, I was put through the ringer. Like I was held to an incredibly high standard. My mentor, Elaine Kalila Dowdy, is an incredible teacher. I do not train priestesses. That would be like Jonathan teaching in medical school, like a year out of residency.
But maybe when you're like in your 60s or 70s, you will. And I look forward to that.
I'm excited about that. But right now, my two teachers, Elaine Kalila Dowdy and Diana Dubrow, both train priestesses.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That's so important.
Yeah. Okay. So I anointed you.
So A, you were born for this, but B, then you got training.
Yeah, just like, because you're born to be an architect, it doesn't mean you can just like go build a house. Like you have to get training.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Lineage is so important.
Yeah.
Great. So you do the anointing ceremony. And then I had an incredibly powerful experience, deep remembering. And then I opened my eyes, and do you remember what happened?
Yes.
Can you say it? 'Cause I can't.
Yeah, it was during a time in your life where there was some like friction. And this is what's so powerful about being in ceremony, because you sat up and we looked at each other and I said, I remember. And you said, I remember. I am a sex priestess.
Okay, I forgot that part. I'm glad you said that story, but we'll get into that another time. But
it was a good one.
There
was something else. That was the thing that really.
Well, what I was gonna say. See, this is why this matters.
Yeah.
This is why spiritual community matters, because people remember things that you are so conditioned to forget.
Yeah.
I mean, that part I do know.
Yeah.
The part that I was going to say, I love that you just said that right now. I love you so much. Yeah. But the part
really
that
important.
I was
you
going
are.
to, I know I am. What I was going to say is that like, I woke up and in that moment I could see through time and space. And I was like, oh, like we were together.
Yeah.
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And then you led the ceremony because you were like, you said, I remember it. And then I said, I remember too. But then something happened where it was like, basically like, it's good to see you again.
Yeah. Because that part of you wasn't online yet.
And now I'd come online.
Yes.
And this is what happens because it happened in the mastermind. So you know how you meet people who, and this is like for you, but also for people listening mostly, when you meet people that you're just like, I don't know what it is about this person, but I remember them. I must be in space with them. This is happening in my life at a rapid rate. And it happened in the ceremony at that mastermind where we opened our eyes and could see each other. And it was so clear. This was not our first time. sitting in that particular circle.
Yeah. I feel body chills. Yeah. And that ceremony was so deep.
It was so deep.
Yeah.
And that's the power of the remembering that like, this isn't our first time. So for anyone listening, I just want to say, if you're having that kind of remembrance with other humans, you can really trust that this isn't your first time and that you have for sure been incarnated at this time where we were all standing around with God, like you said before. And it was like, okay, I need someone to do this. I need someone to do this. I need someone to do this. And you were like, okay, I guess I'll do that priestess thing. And I was like, I guess I'll do that money thing and maybe sex later.
Yeah. Same.
And somebody else was like, okay, great. I'll do the sound healing. I'll do the herbs. I'll be a regenerative agriculture, right? Whatever, all of that. And so like we came in right now together on purpose. This is not by mistake. And if you're remembering, you're right on time.
The thing that's coming up for me right now is that there is so much divine orchestration happening without us being aware of it. Because this happens to me all the time. You know, it's like with my business partner, Kelly, we worked together for a year and a half. And it was like we were just coworkers. And then one day she came online in a different way. I came online in a different way. And we were just like, there you are.
There you are.
I remember. And now we're able to take the company to a completely different place because we are both leading from our souls. And when we can do that with more and more people, and I've had that with Jonathan, you know, and there was a time, you remember, where Jonathan would leave. It's like the switchboard would change sort of like every, couple weeks. And then his soul would come back into his body and I would be like, there you are. And now he's just here, thank God. And it's just it's a better way to navigate because you have access to every lifetime. You have access to the unseen language of the universe, and you have access to gifts that you've been cultivating and learning for many, many, many lifetimes. Yeah. And this is something our friend Jen Rassiopi taught us, where I remember she said to me, she's like, we are the transition team. We came in forgetting and then remembering who we are so that no one needs to forget again. And it's so important to feel the intensity of that role, the importance of that role, and the great responsibility and challenge that is going to be for us. And we have to take it seriously. Yeah. I love you so much.
I love you so much, Sarah Jenks. So thank you for everything. Where can people find you?
Oh my God, I love you so much. Well, there's two ways. If you want to really cultivate your own personal practice, I have a great guide called Sacred Start. So if you just follow me on Instagram, it's Sarah with an H, Jenks, Jenks, and DM me the word morning. I'll send you totally free how to create your own morning practice.
Hot tip, just only send the word morning. Don't put anything else in the DM. Otherwise, it'll screw up her little bot assistant.
Great. Thank you.
So just only the word morning.
Only
Don't put anything else.
Don't be like, hi, Sarah, blah, blah, blah.
It won't work.
Yeah.
Just morning.
Okay, just morning. And then if you want to join our Mystery School of Life, Holy Woman, you just DM me the word holy. And I'm so grateful for that community. We had a ceremony a couple days ago and we blew it out of the water. It's amazing to see what happens when we all get together. Yeah.
And I do want to just put in a tip for anyone, if you do get the chance to come and sit in circle in person with Sarah in Medfield, Massachusetts. Yeah. It's, I don't even really know the word. I'm just going to say worth it.
It's worth it.
It's worth the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth the trip. I mean, people have come in and it's not me. Like I'm just creating the environment.
Exactly.
I've been trained to create the environment, and people will come in and like they haven't been able to get pregnant for like 2 to 3 years. They'll get pregnant 2 weeks later. You know, they have been trying to leave their toxic marriage
Yes.
and they'll for years and they'll leave it the next day. I mean, it is just
it is so efficient.
an initiate.
And you
it
know
is so
I love
efficient.
efficiency.
It's so efficient.
It's very do less, have more.
Yeah.
Ceremony is really the way.
It's true. And so if you join Holy Woman, you can come in person. There's usually 50 of us. We do ceremonies every new moon. But then I also do this incredible 3-day retreat on the land. We have 150 women there. We're in ceremony all day. There's no video cameras. We're just in it. And it's really powerful. And if you want to come to that, just DM me the word emerge.
Okay, love it.
Yeah.
All of this will be in the show notes.
Okay, great.
I love you so much.
I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Such a joy.